early evening, he's at curling, which is, I think, the mixed bronze medal event of which I have some interest. And just to give you a few TV figures, as usual, which are quite interesting from around the world. Timo will be here a week. Timo Lume, sorry, who's the chief executive of television and marketing for the IOC, will be here a week tomorrow, when we have a more consolidated view. But just a few things just to give you an idea of the coverage around the world. Coverage of the ski jumping men's normal hill competition on ZDF achieved the highest share of viewing of the day across all programming in Germany. The opening ceremony in Sweden on Channel 5 achieved an audience over double that of Tokyo opening ceremony. It aired at the same time on the same channel, so that's an interesting like-for-like comparison. And in the US, NBC is reporting that they've now reached 1 billion minutes of Beijing content that have been streamed by viewers on their digital platform. That's the fastest time that they've got to that milestone. So yeah, 1 billion minutes of viewing. Okay, so today, as promised, as usual, we'll discuss any topic you want, but I have with me, I have Dr. Brian McCluskey, who you will know is the chair of the Beijing 2022 Medical Expert Panel, and then we have some other guests online, so I will hand over to my colleague Yang Jirong, who will explain to you, and then we'll have some presentations.
谢谢马克，大家上午好。我很高兴再次和马克一起共同主持今天的例行发布会。那么在分会场通过视频连线参加我们今天发布会的是大家可能已经比较熟悉的我们北京冬奥组委的疫情防控的副主任黄春先生。好，今天呢也将由他来介绍防疫方面的相关情况。我呢先通报一下其他的一些情况。首先是赛事的情况。昨天11个竞赛场馆分别进行了14个小项的比赛，共产生了9枚金牌，分别由中国、俄罗斯奥委会、加拿大、瑞士、瑞典、荷兰、德国、意大利、斯洛文尼亚队取得。北京冬奥会新增的项目跳台滑雪混合团体赛，昨晚在张家口国家跳台滑雪中心雪如意进行，斯洛文尼亚队夺得冠军，也成为该项目的首个奥运冠军。因为天气原因延期的高山滑雪男子滑降比赛昨天顺利进行，瑞士选手夺得了金牌。在此，我们向所有奋力拼搏的运动员表示热烈的祝贺。昨天呢，我们也欣喜地看到中国的年轻选手在冬季项目上取得的进步。17岁的中国运动员苏翊鸣夺得中国男子单板滑雪第1枚冬奥会奖牌。我想说的是呢，这个无论是中国的年轻运动员，还是其他国家的年轻运动员，无论是获得奖牌还是没有获得奖牌，相比于他们的这个比赛成绩，他们身上所体现出来的精神，更让我们更是令人鼓舞。北京冬奥会的愿景之一就是要让奥林匹克点亮青年人的梦想。所以呢，我们是期待有更多的年轻人在冬奥的赛场上奏响他们的青春之歌，也希望这个北京冬奥会能够带动更多的人参与冬季运动。今天呢，11个竞赛场馆将进行12个小项的比赛，预计产生10枚金牌，其中北京赛区3枚，延庆赛区2枚，张家口赛区5枚。最后我来通报一下天气的情况，预计今天白天到夜间各个赛区以晴到多云天气为主，气温继续回升。北京赛区最高气温7度，最低气温零下4度。延庆赛区白天山顶西北风3到8米每秒，阵风7到13米每秒。张家口晴转多云为主。通报完毕，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much. Okay, as I said, we're going to have a focus a little bit today on COVID and control measures. So let's go over to Mr. Huang, Deputy Director General of the Office of Pandemic Prevention and Control, to run through some of the figures for us. Mr. Huang.
谢谢马克。各位媒体朋友，上午好。下面由我通报北京冬奥会新冠疫情的相关情况。2月7日0点至23点59分，机场入境涉奥人员133人，其中运动员及随队官员93人，其他利益相关方40人。全天海关没有检出阳性人员。2月7日0点至23点59分。 闭环内核酸检测总次数70524，其中运动员及随队官员6720，其他利益相关方63804人。闭环内的复检阳性总共是6人，其中运动员及随队官员5人，其他利益相关方1人。1月23日至2月7日，也就是我们那个注册，就是预开春。 预开春的到现在，累计复检阳性是393人，其中运动员及随队官员占到了40.46%，其他利益相关方占到了59.54%，机场检出总共占了62.85%，闭环内检出占了37.15%。截止到目前，几乎所有的 阳性病例都是来华前的感染，或者说是闭环内潜伏期内的感染。我们也做了一个统计，大约在2/3的人群，也是68%的人群，它都是已经解除了隔离或者出院，大多数是一个非常好的消息。闭环内目前呢没有发生聚集性的疫情，充分说明我们现有的 疫情防控措施是有力有效的，疫情的风险是总体可控。接下来呢，随着机场入境的人员的减少，海关检出的占比就是阳性的数也会相应的减少。未来一段时间呢，因为存在着潜伏期内的感染，闭环内检出阳性的占比呢，它会有所增加。但是只要我们坚持 行之有效的、严格的闭环的管理措施，依据今后一段时间，病例数将会持续的下降。下一步呢，我们仍然要严格的遵守闭环内的防疫措施，我们共同努力为比赛营造一个健康安全的环境。我的通报完毕，谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Mr. Huang. Let's now go to Dr. Brian McCluskey, who will give us a view of kind of where we are after how many days of competition, 4 or 5 is it now? I'm losing track. But Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Just a quick comment, really, on where we are in terms of the planning and what we expected to happen during the Games. And you remember when we started this process, we said we were putting in place 3 layers of testing to make sure the Games were safe, pre-departure, airport and inside the closed loop, and that we expected the positivity rate to be higher at pre-departure, lower at the airport and lower still in the closed loop, and that the positivity in the closed loop would decline after people had been here for 3 to 5 days. And that is what we are now seeing. The number of cases inside the closed loop is going down, and the number of cases at the airport was 0 at the moment. So we're seeing it evolve as we expected it to do, and we now still believe that the situation inside the closed loop is extremely safe, and there's no sign of spread of infection, and certainly no sign of infection spreading outside the closed loop. So that is generally good news, that we are where we expect it to be. It doesn't mean we can relax, because we never relax about coronavirus, but we can say we are comfortable with where we are, and we hope that continues, and we expect it to continue. The other point we're at is that we're now seeing more people coming out of isolation than are going into isolation, and again that is good news. The average length of stay in isolation is now just under 7 days, And we know that people who had previous infections can be let out earlier because they are no longer infectious. And we see that people with previous infection are now coming out of isolation in just over 4 days, and about 8 days for new infections who are potentially more risky. So again, that is moving in the right direction. I say again, that doesn't mean we can relax, but it means that we are comfortable with where we are at currently. Thank you.
Dr. McCloskey, thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's take some questions now. Happy to go to questions. Yeah, let's start over here. The lady with the black hat.
Hi, Jacqueline Diaz with National Public Radio. In the case of the Belgian bobsledder, I believe, she says she had COVID before coming and had recovered, but she said that the test would still show that she is still positive for COVID even after multiple tests show she's negative. Has there been any leeway given to athletes that have had COVID and may test positive while they're here after initially testing negative? And in that case, do organizers really think it's fair then to disqualify these athletes if they can't recover in time for their competition? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think it's...
Sorry.
You'll understand that we need to be very careful talking about individual cases, but I think in terms of the principle about leniency and so on, Brian, I can leave that to you very clearly.
Thank you. Essentially, there are two situations that can arise where people have had coronavirus before and then test positive when they get here. One of those we know about is that people can continue to test positive intermittently for quite a long time after having a diagnosis of COVID. I think the record in the medical literature is about 109 days. Mostly those people are not infectious and can be allowed to continue to partake in the games and compete. But the second position is where somebody has had COVID before and then has a reinfection with a new variant like Omicron. That's an entirely new infection, and they are infectious and can't be allowed into the closed loop without restrictions. So the challenge is to distinguish the two. And the medical expert panel has developed protocols to allow us to do that, and that looks at all the range of values of the tests that individuals have had over the period from before the Games to now, to form a judgment about whether we think this is a case where they're continuing to shed parts of the virus but are not infectious. And in that case, they can be allowed out under the close contact protocol. They will be allowed to train and compete. So the medical expert panel can make the distinction, but those who are testing positive because of their previous infection will be allowed to take part in the Games and will not be disqualified from doing so.
Thank you very much. Yeah, lady down the front here.
Good morning, Vanessa Lee with CTV Canadian News. Finland's team doctor is saying that isolation decisions are not based on science, but rather cultural and political decisions. How do you respond to that?
They're based on science, and they have been since many months before these games started. And the medical expert panel has been meeting regularly. We have been sharing and exchanging scientific papers between us. We've been looking at the evidence as it emerges from around the world and applying that to the protocols we've developed here. Our understanding of coronavirus has been changing constantly over the last 2 years. It continues to evolve, and as it evolves, we review the situation in terms of our protocols. But they are based on science. The difference, I say, is the difference between those people who test positive because they're continuing to shed the virus and the fact that we are now seeing people testing positive who are reinfections. That was not something that was known about even 2 months ago until Omicron came around. So the possibility that somebody is a new infection and is therefore infectious has been developed over the last 2 months, and our protocols allow for that, but that is still based on the science around the world about reinfections.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, let's take the lady here. Yeah.
Good morning, Yan Mei with China Global Television Network. Unlike the 2008 Olympics this year due to the pandemic, foreign reporters are unable to tour around China and experience the culture in other cities. So what exactly is the Beijing Olympic Committee doing to ensure, our reporters getting the experience and the culture experience as well? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think that's one for you, Madame Yang.
谢谢你的提问。我想说的是呢，就是媒体朋友们，我们和你们一样，因为疫情的原因，都不得不在闭环内活动。那么我们这么做呢，是因为没有防疫的安全，就没有一届成功的、精彩的奥运会。我们采取的一切的措施呢，就是为了能够最大限度、尽最大的可能来给运动员参赛提供一个安全的环境，让这些运动员没有后顾之忧，能够全力以赴的去创造最好的成绩，实现他们的梦想。那么疫情之下，实际上媒体的传播，就是重要性就更加的凸显。很多外国记者朋友是远道而来，我觉得是充分体现了对奥林匹克事业和体育运动的支持和热爱，我们对此是表示高度的赞赏了。我呢就是所在的北京冬奥组委，我们是致力于为中外记者，为你们的报道工作提供最好的条件和尽可能的便利。那么确实是哈，来到北京，可能一些外国记者会想着我们转一转、看一看。所以呢，为了弥补这方面的缺憾，北京冬奥组委我们和闭环外的北京新闻中心是联动，组织系列的线上观光采访活动。那么线上观光采访活动呢是中英双语的，我们也要感谢新时代赋予我们的时代赋予我们的新技术，能够实现这样一种往线上的直播连线这种采访活动。如果咱们闭环内的记者参加这样的活动呢，就可以在主播的带领下去线上的观光，而且呢可以进行互动。我这边要特别的推荐一下的呢，就是2月11号的上午，系列的线上观光采访活动将走进成都大熊猫保护基地。在那个地方呢，我想大家能够见到各个不同年龄段的冰墩墩原型，也就是我们的国宝大熊猫。所以呢，就是欢迎大家参加这个活动。后续呢，我们还将陆续的推出不同主题的这种观光采访活动。线下呢，就是我刚才说的是线上的观光采访活动。那么线下呢，主媒体中心一些闭环内的记者已经参与了我们的长城的活动，见到了长城的，领略了长城的雄伟。我们下一阶段我们还计划继续组织这样的活动。欢迎各位记者留意MyInfo 系统上这方面的信息。我想强调的就是媒体朋友们，我们是始终愿意倾听大家的意见和建议，并且不断的改进和提升我们的媒体服务水平。我们希望和大家携手一起，共同为全球奉献一届简约、安全、精彩的冬奥会。谢谢。
Thank you very much, Carlos from Reuters.
Carlos Groman from Reuters. A question for Mr. Huang on the cases and the development in the closed loop from now on. You've had 0 cases at the airport, the ones you announced today, 6 cases in the closed loop. How do you see that number in the closed loop developing in the next few days? And a question for Mark, has there been any contact of the South Korean Olympic Committee regarding yesterday's incident or disqualification at the speed skating? Thank you.
Mr. Hang, and then maybe Dr. McCluskey as well, but Mr. Hang first, yeah.
好，刚才沈委也说到了，现在随着入境的人员的减少，海关的阳性的检测数它也相应的减少。但是毕竟新冠病毒包括奥密克戎，它有一个入境海关之后，它有可能检测是阴性，但是呢，它是进入闭环之后，它可能处于潜伏期，所以我们预判呢，在闭环内呢，它会有一定的数量的病例，每天还会应该有。因为它毕竟境外人员那么多，所以还是潜伏期内的带了病毒。我们希望通过我们严格的闭环管理措施，能够严格的核酸检测，第一时间把这阳性病例给它筛查出来，第一时间控制阻断它的传播。所以现在目前来说，我们整个闭环内是运行有效，而且是非常安全的。谢谢您的提问。
Dr. McCarthy, do you want to add to that?
Just to say, Mr. Huang is right in the sense that the risk is greater for people outside China than inside China, and the layers of testing we did were designed to gradually remove that until people got inside the closed loop. But people can incubate COVID slowly and test positive shortly after they arrive. But once you get inside the closed loop for about 5 days or so, the risk that you're incubating disease from before is much less. And the reality of the closed loop and the precautions is that as you go around the village or the closed loop, essentially everybody you meet has tested negative for COVID on a PCR test within the last 24 hours. And almost all of them have been vaccinated. So your risk of developing COVID after that time becomes less and less. So we may see some more positive tests coming through, but we would expect that number to be less. And that's what we plan to happen.
So would it be fair to say that we are probably in the safest place in the world at the moment as regards catching COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I think your chance of picking up COVID within a closed loop here is less than anywhere else in the world at the moment.
Thank you, Brian. And on the other question, Carlos, yeah, I mean, as you know, it's a field of play issue. It's an issue between the IF and the NOC. I think you asked if we'd been in contact. I don't know. I don't think so. We obviously talk to federations and NOCs all the time, but there's been no formal communication as far as I'm aware. Yes, gentleman at the back there.
Good morning, everybody. Philip Barker from Inside the Games. Hello, Mark.
Sorry, didn't recognise you with the
Didn't
mask.
recognise me. There I am. Just a couple of questions about COVID. First of all, how satisfied are you that athletes are getting sufficient notice when they're cleared to allow them to prepare properly for competition? And also, I wondered whether you had any comment about the Russian team wearing masks under their masks yesterday. It seemed a little bit unusual when we saw it on the television. So if I could ask your thoughts on that, please.
In relation to the preparation time, yes, in general we are. And the system was designed to try and ensure that the testing process did not interfere with athletes' preparation for competition or their sleep or other things. Yeah, unfortunately, this is a very big, complicated system, and occasionally it goes slightly wrong. And we know there have been instances where it hasn't gone as well as it should have done. But in general, people have an ability to get tested at a time of their choosing that suits their preparation for competition. In terms of mask wearing, the wearing of masks for COVID is a personal choice by an individual, here as it is in countries all around the world. So people may choose to wear them if it makes them feel more comfortable. I would say that the medical evidence about the risk of infection on the field of play is such that masks are not necessary and probably will not help. But wearing them, I say, is an individual choice.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, gentleman in a grey sweatshirt over there. Yeah. Yes, you, sir.
I'm from Kyoto News. My question goes to Mr. Huang Bokog, and I ask in Japanese. 組織委員会のファンチュンさんに質問します。観客の観戦のルールについてです。試合の会場を見ていますと、観客が大声を出したり歓声を上げたりしていますが、これはルール上認められているということなんでしょうか。会場でのその観戦ルールについて教えてください。選手向けや大会関係者向けのプレーブックには大声を出したり歓声を上げたりしてはいけないと、拍手で応援してくださいとあるんですが、つまり選手や関係者は声は出してはダメで、観客は声を出してもいいという、そういうことなんでしょうか。お願いします。ありがとうございます。
Is that a question for you, Brian, or yeah?
好
Dr. Huang, yeah, sorry.
好，谢谢您的提问。我觉得这个大家也非常关心。北京冬奥会和东京奥运会最大的区别就是我们有观众参赛，尽管说观众不能达到100%的这么一个饱和度。最近几天我们看到每个赛场，包括我们的开幕式，都有很多观众在观赛。下一步呢，根据需求呢，我们还会增加我们的观众的上座率。这是我们看到目前因为在闭环内疫情形势是可控的，总体是非常好的。对至于观众呢，我们是确实我们这次观众也是在特定的环境下，我们是有组织的进行观众的观赛。我们在赛前我们要对他进行健康监测，而且赛前我们要进行核酸的检测。进入赛场或者进入开幕式的现场，我们要给观众他毕竟是闭环外的人员，我们要设置单独的出入口，单独的通道，单独的流向，走到观众的专门的看台区。返回的时候同样如此，所以都是按照返回的同样的流程。所以返回之后，他回到他的驻地或者居所以后，我们还要对他进行1个星期的健康监测，其中还有2次的核酸检测，以确保就是整个的观赛过程当中，包括他今后观赛，包括他回到了城市层面，他所有的情况是不应该带有病毒，它应该是一个就是非感染的状态，也保证我们城市面的安全。谢谢您的关心和提问。
Thank you very much. Yeah, Graham, did you want to ask a question? Yeah. Sorry, Graham Dunbar from AP.
Hi, thank you, Mark. I just want to ask a question about China's biggest long-term contribution to the Olympic Games, which is the Alibaba sponsorship deal, which is already transforming delivery of the Games for broadcasters and is going for local organising committees, including in Paris and Los Angeles. Maybe no sponsor has been more individually, personally linked to the IOC president than Jack Ma, who got almost like royal visit treatment in Lausanne 3 years ago. But the names Alibaba and Jack Ma have almost been non-existent in this room so far. Is there a reason for that? Has he been invited? Is Alibaba going to be sort of praised at some point for all that it's doing? And can we expect to see him at the Games at some point, or has he already been?
I think I might be right in saying he's no longer the CEO of Alibaba, but I'm not sure. Timo Lume will be here on Wednesday. You can ask him directly. Absolutely no problem at all. And we did a little crossover with Alibaba a couple of days ago. I'm kind of not quite sure what the implication you're trying to draw. But
well, he's not CEO anymore. That's Daniel Zhang. But yeah. No one person has probably done more to push forward the delivery of the Olympic Games in recent years than him.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks to him and his contribution. I join you in that. Yeah, next question. Yeah.
谢谢中国新闻社记者，想问一下黄春主任，就是根据通报，我们注意到目前闭环里边新冠阳性的这个病例在下降，但是此前也有不少人这个因此隔离，想问一下，现在正在隔离的这些运动员他们在哪儿？隔离期间的这个生活状态是怎么样的？隔离期间有没有得到哪些关怀或者帮助？谢谢。
好，谢谢您的提问。 事实上呢，我们在防疫手册里边都有明确的规定，无症状的人员要送到我们专门的隔离设施，有症状的人员阳性的，我们要送到那个定点的医院去接受救治隔离。现在目前呢，在北京赛区和延庆赛区呢，总共有4个隔离设施，有1家那个定点医院。在张家口有2个隔离设施和1家定点医院。目前呢，就是确实有一部分的运动员，包括其他利益相关方，都在隔离设施或医疗机构里边。很多人啊，就是在里边的我们的隔离设施里边的一些人员，确实因为很不幸阳性了，不能正常的到赛场去训练。包括在相关他自己的工作场所去工作，确实里边也有一些情绪，甚至有一些抱怨就前些日子，但是我们呢，针对这种情况，我们及时的回应他们的关切，而且就是我每天呢，2点到3点，我跟皮尔斯我们的那个国家奥委会支部办公室，我们要开沟通会，同时我要把所有的酒店隔离设施的医疗机构的都要到线上，就是发现的问题及时回应关切，立行立改，而且要落实到位，不断的来改善我们隔离设施的和医疗机构的环境。现在目前从总体反馈情况来看的话，我们已经得到了显著改善，但是我们也不能骄傲，这是项持续的工作，我们下一步会持续的跟进。至于隔离设施呢，我想呢，就是这里边呢，我们也是为运动员和相关的利益方提供更好的一些，包括餐食，我们跟职业冬奥村送餐，包括我们专门的保洁，我们也提升了服务，包括运动员提出的有健身的需求，甚至把器材能不能带到隔离设施，能不能带到他们需要的物品，现在我们的渠道都是畅通的，所以我相信呢，下一步我们会越来越好，越做越好，也希望我们在隔离设施和医疗机构的我们这些隔离对象，我们这些病人们能够尽快的早日的康复，重返赛场，创造好的成绩。谢谢您的提问。
Dr. McCluskey, do you want to add to that?
Yes, thanks, Mark. I mean, isolation is not good for anybody, and we know around the world that the isolation that's been caused by COVID may turn out to be one of the long-lasting damages that COVID has caused to people around the world. I took part in a call on Sunday arranged by the Athletes Commission with athletes who are in isolation, and I understand the frustration, the stress, the disappointment that they feel after all the preparations. And it is not a good place to be, but we are trying to improve that for them, and that's why we've developed the protocols to allow as many people out of isolation as possible. The reality, however, is I can't make the pandemic go away for the duration of the Games. The pandemic is real and the risk is real. So we have to manage the risk. So we have protocols. We will allow as many people as possible out of isolation to train and compete as we can, but only as many as we can do safely and not put other athletes, other participants or the Chinese population at risk. In the meantime, we will do our best to look after those who are in isolation, but we have to be sure we manage that risk properly.
Thank you very much, Dr. McCluskey. Yes, gentlemen there. And Graham, I should say there is a story on, I was mentioning the crossover with Alibaba. It's on the website. We put it on yesterday, so it's on the website of the IOC. So if you want some more information on the contribution that Alibaba is making, it's front and centre on the website if you want to do a story. Yes.
Good morning, Anthony Germain with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I think my question is for Dr. Huang, and I wouldn't mind hearing Dr. McCloskey on this. I think a lot of people are very happy to see the fans, some Chinese people in the venues enjoying the games, which is quite different from what we saw in Tokyo. I just want to make sure that I understood what Mr. Huang said before. So who are these fans? How do you choose them? How do you screen them? And did I understand correctly that once they leave a sport and leave the loop, that they stay away for 7 days? Because that would mean every day you have a new batch of fans that you're bringing inside the loop. I find this very fascinating just from a logistical point of view. And Dr. McCloskey, I wonder if this raises any concerns or cautions about moving so many people in and out of a closed loop. Thank you.
Dr. Huang. I think, for you first.
好的，谢谢您的对这个问题的持续的关注。事实上呢，我们的观众不是说永远是这批观众，我们每一批都有不同的观众，新的观众，他是可能对这个比赛感兴趣，或者对那个比赛感兴趣，所以我们不是说专门就是固定一批人来看这个比赛，这是我要说的第一点。第二点呢，我们说的就是健康监测，并不是说要居家隔离，他不能出门在赛后之后，我们就是他可以正常的去上班，正常的去工作。我们主要是就是让他最好不要参加一些聚集性的活动，不要到密集人流的地方去，按时的按要求的做2次核酸检测，也是确保我们能够城市面包括我们的赛区的这么赛事场馆的这些场所的安全。假如说他还要参加观赛的这种情况的话，所以我想呢是这么考虑的。谢谢您。
I think you had a question already, so let's go for someone else. Anyone else want to? Oh, yes, sorry, Brian. Yeah, please. Sorry, I do apologise.
No, I mean, if you ask me in public health terms, what is the absolute safest way to run a sport without causing risk of COVID? The answer is you put the smallest possible number of people on the field to play and you lock the doors around them and don't let anybody else in. But that's not sport, and it's certainly not the Olympics. So the issue becomes, how can we do it that creates the right atmosphere but keeps the risk as small as possible? And that's what we're doing within the closed loop, and that's why we're working with the Chinese authorities to make sure we manage people in and out of the closed loop. We need to remember that the risk of COVID in China is extremely low. So the spectators come in are relatively low-risk people. So that can be managed by careful planning, which is what is happening with the spectators. So it's creating a minimum risk while allowing the best atmosphere we can.
Thank you, Doctor. Sorry to have cut you off there. Yep, gentleman there in the middle.
Hi, it's Kim Helmgaard from USA Today. There's a German athlete who was disqualified for the mixed team ski jump event last night because of an issue related to kind of body weight, suits and skis, that ratio. The athlete appears to accept that she may have lost some weight in quarantine, but can you address how issues, field of play issues related to athletes being in quarantine that apparently affect their event are being monitored, addressed?
I mean, obviously we can't, I don't even know that case, so it would be difficult to talk about that. But I mean, I think Dr. McCluskey just talked eloquently about how it's difficult for the athletes in confinement, and having the meeting with them 2 days ago, was it, where we heard their concerns and we understand their concerns. But I'm not sure we can add very much more to that. But we can take it offline afterwards if you want. Inside the games, over there.
Hi, Michael Pavitt from Inside the Games. A question for Dr. McCluskey. You mentioned the number of athletes in isolation has dropped. Can you tell us how many at the moment there are in isolation? And secondly, on athletes where they're testing maybe positive and negative and then positive again, at what point can they go from being considered a close contact case and being on the field of play to what's the threshold for them to be withdrawn from a competition?
In terms of number, I think there are currently 32 athletes in isolation. 50 athletes have been discharged from isolation, so more leaving than going in. In one sense, to your second question, there is no absolute figure which says if you're above this figure you're okay, if you're below it you're not. We have protocols for what the CT value in the test might be, but the reality is we look at the pattern of tests over a period of days, weeks, to see, are we convinced that this is a case that people are doing this intermittent positive testing, they're shedding dead particles of virus, they don't have live virus in the system and therefore not infectious, so they can move into the close contact protocol. The red flags that might suggest people could not do that would be if the CT value starts falling quite dramatically, which might suggest they had acquired a new infection or becoming infectious again. So there's no fixed values, but what we look for is indications that our assumption that they're not infectious might be changing. If they become infectious, then they will not be allowed to compete.
Thank you. I'm sensing there's less intensity today, so we'll take maybe one more question. Two more questions, yeah. Steve, do you want to go first? Or yeah.
Hi, Steve Wade from Associated Press. I want to follow up with Mr. Wong and maybe Ms. John too. Who are the fans that are in these venues? You haven't sold any tickets, so I'm curious about who they are, how you select them, who gets to go in and who doesn't get to go in, and why are certain people picked and other people not picked? Thanks.
谢谢你的问题。正如刚才那位记者讲的，很高兴，北京冬奥会很好的一面就是我们的比赛是带观众的。那么也像布莱恩博士刚才讲到的，当前呢这个新冠疫情在全球仍然是在持续的，所以呢，从北京冬奥组委来说，为了给比赛营造一个良好的这个比赛氛围，我们确实是克服了重重的困难。来组织观众现场的这个观赛。那么在组织观众的过程中呢，我们也是始终把疫情防控放在这个首位，兼顾各方观赛的需求，并且充分的体现广泛性。所有的观众呢也都是自愿报名的这样的形式。同时也像黄春博士说的，他这个观众需要在观赛前、观赛中、观赛后，都要严格遵守疫情防控的相关的这个要求。那么各个场馆它的具体情况是不同的，所以呢，观众的数量也会因为各个具体场馆的它的大小和具体情况是不同的。总之呢，你可以相信中国境内的观众，他们一定会为各国的运动员都这个拼命的加油助威，谢谢。我刚才已经说了，兼具这个各方的需求，有这个充分的广泛性，而且是采用自愿报名的形式，谢谢。
Okay, so it's a voluntary application, I guess. That's fine. If you want more detail, I'm sure we can sort some out afterwards or later in the day. Okay, I'm sensing, yeah, let's finish then today with lady there for a last question.
Hello, Yemei from CGTN. You said earlier that the athletes are under treatment at specific facilities. I was wondering, what are the conditions, under what circumstances are they being discharged to get back to the Olympic Games? Thank you.
Klasky, yeah, please.
First of all, I'd say I wouldn't use the word treatment because actually the vast majority of the people who are positive are perfectly well. They have no symptoms. They're not under any treatment. So the decision about when they leave is about when we can judge that they are not infectious to other people and they don't pose a risk to athletes, participants and the population. So that's done on the basis of a series of negative tests while they're in isolation. If they get those negative tests, then they're allowed out.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll call that a day. Yeah, thank you. And we'll be back at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you immensely then. Thank you.